Hey everybody, happy Tuesday and welcome to another TechStrong TV broadcast. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon. Today is Tuesday, May 17th, and we have a great lineup on today's show for you. We're going to get things kicked off with a conversation between Alan and Dan Garfield, who is the co-founder over at CodeFresh. They talk about CodeFresh's new flagship, a continuous delivery platform that is going to be made accessible as a fully hosted solution for DevOps teams to achieve frictionless Git Ops based continuous software delivery in the cloud. So this new hosted offering will provide the Argo continuous delivery platform as a service and introduce new Dora dashboards and integrations with popular continuous integration platforms. This is also going to be available free to small teams and community projects. So this is a great technology, it's a great service, and it's a great conversation. After that, we have the Haunted Hacker podcast, and this is part 2 of a 2-part conversation that host Mike Jones has with Alex Berta, who is he provides threat intelligence, cybersecurity, and incident response services, and they run the gamut of conversations as always. But one of the things that they really focus on is the darker side of social media and the internet, especially as it pertains to minors and children. And they discuss how volatile and toxic social media can be for kids. And Alex also shares up some of his intelligence gathering stories. They also end with something a lot more lighter topic, which is fun with 3D printing. So there you have it, folks. We ran a part 1 on yesterday's show, so this is part 2. I hope you can take a listen to both of them if you get a chance. After that, we have our monthly Gitlab The Lab installment. This is a it's a monthly show in which Brendan O'Leary from Gitlab comes on and tells us about all the things happening over there. And as always, Brendan's got a lot to say. After that, we've got our Something Old segment. This one is from the Secure Software Summit. This one features Adolfo Garcia Veitia, who is the software engineer over at ChainGuard. His presentation is titled What an S-Bomb Can Do for You. And he dives into the nuances of an S-Bomb, or a software bill of materials. And he's also sharing his experiences on how to use S-Bombs effectively in the software release process. And there's a lot of takeaways in this presentation, so I do highly encourage you to check it out. After that, I'm back with the headlines, and then I have a great conversation with Jane Wong, who is the VP of Security Products over at Splunk. And we discuss Splunk's latest State of Security report, which confirms that there is a severe and growing shortage of cybersecurity talent. This as the threat landscape continues to grow even more complex. And so Jane and I talk about that and ways in which organizations can hopefully help stem the tide of or at least close the gap a little bit when it comes to cybersecurity personnel and employee talent. After that, I've got the webinars preview, and then we close things out with two views with Vizard. In this first one, he also talks to somebody from Splunk. Mike Vizard is talking to Spiros Xanthos, who is the senior vice president and general manager for observability at Splunk, and they talk about why observability gains are being made faster today. Definitely a great conversation to check out. There's a lot of takeaways in that one. And then in his second conversation, Mike talks to Cybersecurity CTO Daniel Krivelovich. I got it, yay. And they talk about why CI/CD platforms have become a major attack surface that needs defending. Certainly a very topical conversation there as well. And then that is it for the show today. That's a great lineup. So many great conversations happening on today's show, and I hope you could stick around for the entirety. We're going to get things kicked off right after these commercial messages.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
All right, welcome back to TechStrong TV. We've got a great lineup today, and we're going to get things kicked off right now with a conversation between Alan and Dan Garfield, who is a co-founder at CodeFresh. They're talking about CodeFresh's new continuous delivery platform that is being made accessible as a fully hosted solution for DevOps teams. This is Git-based continuous software delivery in the cloud. The new hosted offering also will provide the Argo continuous deliveries platform as a service and introduce new Dora dashboards and integrations with popular continuous integration providers. This is also going to be made free to small DevOps teams and community projects. Great technology, and it's a great conversation. Let's go ahead and roll it now.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, welcome to another TechStrong TV segment. I am really happy. I haven't had him on in way too long. Our friend Dan Garfield. Dan, if you don't know, is co-founder, chief open source officer at CodeFresh, and he's also a maintainer of the Argo project, which is, again, if you don't know, a really successful open source project that was kind of kicked off by the CodeFresh folks. And you know, as Git Ops has become a thing and more than just, talk, Argo for many represents where rubber meets the road in Git Ops. But anyway, hey, Dan, welcome. How you been?
Great, Alan. It's been very exciting last couple of months, that's for sure.
Sounds like it. Well, you're always up to something, man, so good for you. We've got a lot of news to go over. But before we jump into it, I gave a quick summary. But look, not everyone watching this may be familiar with everything. I was talking about CodeFresh, Argo, etc., Git Ops. You could do better than me. Give them a quick kind of pitch here. What are we talking about?
Just a really quick intro to Git Ops. This is something that is completely upending the way that people deliver software. It's been really accelerated in part by Kubernetes, but it's not limited to Kubernetes. And the basic idea is that you have an automated reconciliation engine that can detect drift in production, drift in your runtimes, and correct that drift using a single source of truth that is in Git. And that's a fairly simple idea. But the tooling for this has gotten really, really good. And this started in part with the open source project, Argo project, Argo CD being the most popular and fastest growing open source GitOps engine out there. And what we've built on top of that is an enterprise offering that really makes it easier to scale your GitOps. And GitOps and Argo CD, I mean, this is being used by Chick-fil-A, by Starbucks, by Capital One, by Tesla, by Google. I mean, it's really taking over. And it's been a really big movement that's happening within the whole industry is everybody adopting GitOps. And it's really delivering on the promise of infrastructure as code and taking it kind of to the next level.
Good. Excellent, man. And also, we might as well get this out of the way, too. For people who want more information on CodeFresh, it's codefresh.com.
Codefresh.io.
Excuse me. Yeah.
We have a redirect.
I thought I remembered that. And then for Argo, where do they go?
Yeah, you can get all. We have all the information at codefresh.io for linking you to GitOps, bringing you into the Argo project, helping you get started on all those things. So that's a great destination for all of those things.
All of it, one-stop shop. Great.
Yeah.
All right. And then also, before we start, you are heading to Europe. We are too. By the time people watch this on Tuesday, we will be in Valencia, Spain, for KubeCon, CNCF, and of course, that's a big show for both CodeFresh and the Argo community.
Yeah, we're gonna have our contributor summit there. We're gonna be doing GitOps Con, which is the most popular co-located event with KubeCon. We'll have the CodeFresh booth. We'll have a booth just for Argo. So stop by if you're there, and we can talk shop and talk about some of our announcements. Lots of stuff happening. It's very exciting.
Very cool. All right, I think we've set the table. Dan, so there are a number of announcements that you guys are making in front of Git Ops here, and let's go through them if you don't mind, and share with our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, the biggest announcement is we are taking our very popular Git Ops service. So we've launched, and it's been available for the last 2 years. It's been very popular. You can do you can do GitOps using CodeFresh, and this requires deploying components onto your cluster and managing it that way. What we're doing with this announcement is we're announcing a fully hosted version of GitOps. So now instead of setting up a hybrid component that you own and control and maintain, you can now just come and use our hosted version, which is essentially we're doing for GitOps, we're doing for Argo what GitHub did for Git. We're making it super accessible. It's fully hosted. You go in, you create an account for free, and you can add a Kubernetes cluster and you can start deploying to it using GitOps on day one, no installation, no big setup. It's super, super easy. So we think this is really going to open up and make GitOps more accessible to more people where they may have struggled to maintain their own instances of Argo, run them in a secure way, and then bringing them into scale. That's something that people have struggled with a little bit. And so that's something that we're going to make really, really easy. Really just the easiest way to get started with GitOps would be this new hosted GitOps offering that we have. You just create an account, add your Kubernetes cluster, and you're off to the races. And you can manage many Kubernetes clusters, and it scales, and it works with our hybrid offering, and it brings all the features that people love about our enterprise GitOps offering that's built on Argo CD and Argo rollouts. It brings it all to the hosted experience. So progressive delivery is part of that too, which is something that we haven't really touched on. But if you want to start doing canary releases, if you want to start doing blue-green deployments, it's very turnkey, very easy to do. You don't have to have a service mesh. This works with an Amazon ALB. It works with an Nginx ingress. So lots of great options there. So
very cool.
That's the first announcement, which I think is huge.
Yeah, let's talk about that before we jump to the second, if it's okay. So, look, we live in a SaaS world, right? It's SaaS ops, and everybody. I think the preferred for most of the market, the preferred scenario is a SaaS version like this, right? You don't have to worry about maintaining infrastructure and all of that craziness.
Yeah, at the end of the day, people want to deploy the software that they're trying to build and not have to worry about deploying software to help them deploy that software. So
exactly,
this is something, with our hybrid offering, that's something that is really popular in industries that have a requirement to maintain their components. And so in the defense industry, in banking, fintech, some retail, some healthcare customers.
Well, you have regulatory compliance issues is where you see it, right? And it's the usual suspects there: government, healthcare, finance.
But that leaves a whole segment of the market of people who are like, hey, we're using GitHub anyway to source our code. We're happy just to have something turnkey that we don't have to manage. And this really makes it a lot more accessible for all those folks, because now they don't really have to worry about setting up and maintaining it. And there is, when you're setting up Argo, you want to be doing it in a secure way. You want to follow best practices. And sometimes that's a little bit more work to do. And what we're doing is a very secure solution. We're using vCluster. We're using Crossplane under the hood to power this stuff. So it's very isolated. So it's a nice secure offering. You get all the benefits of having somebody who is really good at setting up Argo CD and managing it without having to really pay for it. So that's really nice.
Absolutely. And, of course, the flip side of the SaaS kind of deployment conundrum is, look, you pay a premium, right, to have that convenience and have that ease of use. But when you figure out what it costs for that premium versus what it costs you in man hours, there's always the people who just say, well, it doesn't cost me anything to deploy it on my existing infrastructure. So what if my guy works on weekends, right? And little Timmy doesn't see his dad anymore. But it didn't cost us anything. But give us an idea, how is this priced, Dan? How is it sort of,
brought to market like that?
Yeah, so all of our pricing is essentially based on a per user model, essentially. Now, on the we're not revealing all the details when we're announcing right now. We will be launching this service shortly. We will say that it is free for small teams and teams that are doing open source work. They're going to be able to use it for free as well. And then as your team grows, there'll be a natural point at which you would start to pay for those additional users.
Love it. All right, let's jump to announcement number 2.
Yeah, announcement number 2 is very exciting. This is something that we call the Universal Dashboard, and it's going to be shipping with Dora Metrics built in. So for people that aren't familiar with Dora Metrics, this is the DevOps research assessment, and basically it has 4 main metrics, but there are more. The mean time to repair, your average time that it takes you to actually deploy a new feature. There are a couple metrics like that are really the best way of measuring the health of your DevOps team, of your software team. It shows how quickly, how effectively you're able to deliver software. And that's what this whole game is all about. It's about delivering software more quickly, more efficiently, with fewer regressions. And if you have a regression, you're able to deal with that much quicker. So those are the basics of Dora Metrics. And what we're doing with the Universal Dashboard is whether you're dealing with a single Git Ops operator, like you have one instance of Argo CD, or maybe you have 100, or maybe you have 1,000, you can view the information of all of these using the Universal Dashboard. So this brings everything together. You have a bunch of edge deployments. That's great. You're going to get insight into all of them. And those Dora Metrics are going to be available and computed automatically at the account, at the team, and at the application level. So you'll be able to really dig in and figure out, hey, these applications tend to have more regressions. Maybe we can do some strategy about that. Oh, since we've implemented GitOps, we can see that our mean time to repair has really gone down in these applications or in these teams. So really, really good for getting a pulse of what's going on. And it's also super important because it allows you to dig into the possible root cause of failures. And when you're dealing with complex microservice stacks, let's say you have 5,000 microservices, it's not always obvious that a change in service A is causing a failure in service Y. But with the Universal Dashboard, you can say, hey, show me every change that happened, again, at the account level, at the cluster level, at the application level. You can drill down and you can say, show me every change that happened during this time window, because this is when this failure started happening. And it's linked in with information from your CI pipelines, your tests that were run, your Jira tickets. All of that information is brought together into this Universal Dashboard. So you can say, oh, I can very easily correlate this failure that started with a change that happened over here. And looking at the Jira ticket, I can see, oh yeah, this totally would affect service Y over here. And then you can do a rollback or any of those kinds of things. So this Universal Dashboard shipping with Dora Metrics, that's a big deal. And it's something that people have really wanted for a long time. And they spend a lot of effort to try to compute it, but now we can just do it for you automatically.
Yeah, that's excellent. I got a couple things to talk about on this one. So number one, you're mapping it to Dora Metrics. And, look, a lot of the kind of foundational work in Dora was done by, Dr. Nicole Forsgren and Jez. And Gene Kim was involved, but I think it was really Nicole and then a little bit Jez. And then, of course, Dora got bought by Google. And then, Nicole went on to GitHub. And, Google has kind of resurrected or continued Dora from what I've been told and seen. But when you're comparing your stuff to Dora Metrics, Dan, I would imagine you built the dashboard where if we have another set of metrics we're going to compare against or something, that might be possible, or no?
Yeah, it would be possible. And there are 4 main metrics that we're targeting with this launch, and these are the 4 most common ones with Dora: deployment frequency, lead time for change, mean time to recovery, and change failure rate. When you have a pulse on those 4 metrics, you really understand how effective your DevOps team and your software delivery teams are being. So that does open the door to potential additional metrics that can be tracked as part of this. But you're right. The industry has really coalesced around these four that are the most critical. And so people come to us and they say, hey, do you have Dora Metrics? So it's starting to become a thing that people are asking about. So that's nice, because it's really important to measure your team, because if you're measuring them, you're going to be able to improve the performance of those teams.
Absolutely. And that's great. I often wonder if that's what they thought this would kind of result in when they came up with this whole kind of metrics, because it was really, you took a survey. Every company can take a survey and see how they measure up. Are they a high-performing team? But at some level, it's not even how you measure up compared to others. It's just you need to know what your mean times are and so forth.
Well, it allows you to set a budget for, hey, we're doing these changes. What should we expect? Well, I have pretty good predictability about how likely a change is to potentially introduce a failure. So that can lead into me deciding, maybe I'm going to time the release differently. Maybe I'm going to add additional tests to the release. Maybe I'm going to use a canary release because that's going to allow me to automatically catch it and roll it back. That's all part of the game for sure.
Yep. Got it. All right. Let's move on to number 3.
Number three is very exciting as well. We're opening up third-party CI support within CodeFresh GitOps. And this is something that is really exciting because within CodeFresh GitOps, I mentioned that our universal dashboard, we bring in all this information from CI, which helps us give more information to users when they're deciding about rollbacks and things. And that has been really, really popular as a feature. But as we have customers coming in, sometimes they have 5,000 Jenkins pipelines. And it's not that they don't see the advantage of maybe moving to CodeFresh CI, but they're really focused on getting GitOps implemented. And so CI becomes this thing that maybe, they have to invest more time in to really get the full value out of the GitOps side of it. So what we're doing is we're announcing third-party CI support within the CodeFresh platform. And this is going to start with Jenkins and GitHub Actions, which will now integrate directly into your GitOps dashboards. And so if you're coming with 5,000 pipelines, no problem. They just connect directly into CodeFresh. And now your GitOps, you can just get started with doing GitOps without having to rework any CI, and you'll get the full value out of that experience. And we are going to add additional third parties to that support. What we're doing with GitHub Actions and Jenkins is really just the beginning, but we think that's going to be really exciting. It's going to make it a lot easier for people to adopt GitOps because they don't have to necessarily worry about migrating and updating CI as part of that.
Yeah, I think it also speaks to sort of the commoditization of CI. Right. Look, I'm doing DevOps.com 8 years. Yeah, 8 years. And, it was CI was DevOps for a long time, and then CI/CD, right? But when we look at CI today, it is kind of commodity stuff, right?
Yeah, we've seen CI/CD as a term really be abused into continuous delivery situations that it's not ideal for. And so people end up creating these highly scripted, very fragile CD pipelines. And they're, if you've got it working well, you've really dialed it in, it can be effective. But this is where GitOps is really disrupting the industry, because if I set up a GitOps operator, I'm not thinking about a deployment pipeline. I'm thinking about a reconciliation process. And that becomes more about a set of policies than it does than it is about a bunch of imperative kinds of commands that I'm going to run. So it's a lot more resilient. It's a lot more stable. It's a lot easier to do a rollback if you need to. And it really just makes the software delivery process much more efficient. And this is what we're seeing at GitOpsCon. This is what we're seeing from the market. This is what we're seeing from users over and over and over again. If they adopt GitOps and they really start to implement all of these principles, they become much more efficient. They deal with fewer failures. If they have a failure, they're able to roll it back more quickly. So those Dora metrics, it all comes back to those Dora metrics again. That's why we do all of this stuff.
Agreed, man. Good stuff. So that's 3 major announcements. I just want to make sure there's not another one in your hat, is there?
Those are the 3 major announcements that we're making at KubeCon EU. And of course, we do have Argo CD 2.3 coming out. The RC was just announced this week. So within the open source world, within the community edition stuff, there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. And within the kind of premium offering, the enterprise offering, we have a lot of announcements. And so if you want a demo of any of that stuff, you're at KubeCon, stop by the booth. We'd love to give you a demo and show you what those Dora Metrics look like. We'd love to show you what the Git Ops offering looks like. And there's a lot of really cool, nuanced features that go into making these things really excellent. It's not just about checking a box. We're trying to create a really fantastic experience. So yeah, stop by the booth and we'd love to show it to you.
I love it. Dan, you guys have come, I remember, I think the first time I interviewed might have been it was either a Jenkins Days or a DevOps World 5-6 years ago, maybe more. And it's great to see the progress you and CodeFresh have made. And riding the Git Ops wave too. I mean, that was, you were one of the early kind of proponents and champions of Git Ops. So good stuff. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, there was a time when the company we all fit in a garage, and now we're 4 offices on 4 continents. It's really exploded. It's been really exciting.
Yeah, no, it is, man. Love it. Hey, I'll see you at KubeCon.
Yeah, I'll see you there, Alan.
Be well.
All right. Dan Garfield, co-founder, chief open source officer at CodeFresh, as well as a maintainer of the Argo project here on TechStrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and Media Ops CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
All right, we are back. Next up, we've got the Haunted Hacker podcast. In this one, host Mike Jones. This is part 2 of a 2-part conversation that Mike has with Alex Berta, who is a threat intelligence, cybersecurity, and incident response services provider person. And they talk about so many different things, including the darker side of the internet and the risk to children. They talk specifically about how toxic and volatile that social media can be toward children. And Alex also shares some of his intelligence gathering stories. Those are fascinating. They also talk on the lighter side about the fun of 3D printing. So there you go. It's a great conversation. As always, Mike has great conversations with his guests. So let's go ahead and roll it now.
But yeah, the problem with the kids, that really concerns me. But those same predators that are working the online forums, the online games and whatnot, are also reporting back to other groups. The one thing that I found is organized crime groups, pre-pandemic, operate a lot in the streets, right? Well, that whole thing is starting to deteriorate. It fell apart during COVID. So what they did was they started recruiting kids and other people in these forums and games to carry out their shit in order to get money to fund other operations. So you had organized crime going into games to recruit hackers. They knew how to mod, knew how to take over accounts. And now they work for organized crime, making good money. And that's all they care about is what it looks like to be that person. Car, house, whatever. But a lot of organized crime runs those rings online and carry out operations that focus and target kids, which I think is sick. And they do that to fund the rest of their operations. I just think it's absurd.
And one of the things when I started doing my research and all this, I did things like that. I reached out to other criminals on like dark web forums of, hey, like I'm writing this, like, will you talk to me? And a lot was like, go to hell, man, blocked, kicked off a forum, marketplace, whatever. I was done. But every once in a while I would get that one person that would be like, yeah, I'll be straight with you. You ask me straight questions with no like hidden meaning in it or whatever, try to pin me up against the wall and I'll answer it truthfully. So that's what I did. I approached these people, I talked to them, and they were saying the same thing. Hey, this funds a bigger picture. Mm-hmm. And we let the kids have fun because they're making money and they're doing something that they like. They don't see any issue with that. The kids don't see any issue with that.
Right. Yeah.
But then you get,
go ahead.
One of the things that I found interesting was I actually, when I was doing all this research, I talked to somebody that was involved with organ trafficking. Like, never in a million years did I think I would be talking to somebody that like harvests organs, but it was the same thing. And that went back to medical systems, like in the country that he was in, like
broken,
so broken. Like, rich person comes in, pays in cash, needs a new kidney. There's no new kidney in the hospital to give or organ donor list. They pay somebody, that person goes out and gets it. And I mean, this guy went into detail on like how to pick people and everything. And that's something I talked about in my class, because a lot of people think, oh, that doesn't happen in the United States. Oh, no, it happens right in our backyard. We just don't realize it,
Yeah, and that, part of that, too, is the medical system. I remember when, I think it was the Blacklist that I was watching at one point, and they were doing a show on organ trafficking. And I thought it was a joke when I was younger, when I was a kid, about taking a bath in ice. And then I realized that's what they do. They literally drug these people, extract organs, leave them laying on a bed of ice, and they go cash out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the dark web, and the darker side of the internet is a lot darker than most people or professionals like to think they know it is. Mm-hmm. There are things on the dark web that you just can't unsee. And a lot of cybersecurity professionals talk about the dark web like it's like this mysterious black hole, oh, spooky, and they make fun of it. But unless you've actually been and operated in the dark web, there are parts of that web that you'll probably never see and you don't want to see.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on a lot of places, for investigations and everything that like you're talking about. And I mean, like right when you said, like there's things that you're not gonna be able to unsee. I mean, I have an image like burned in the back of my brain that will be there until the day that I die. And it's probably one of the most horrible things I've ever seen on the internet or in person. And I've seen some pretty messed up things in person. And I mean, I have students that joke around. They're like, oh, I'm going to get on the dark web. I'm like, okay, do you want me to help you set up Tor? Like, whatever. Then because I know they're going to make it to like maybe a form or something. And they're going to be like, oh no, like I don't want to click on anything, or it's going to scare them off.
Right.
But then I have those that are like, I spent 8 hours on it last night, and let me show you these sites, Mr. Berta, that I found. And I'm just like, oh no. And like, they a lot of them are like hacking stuff, but I'm like, you're doing that from like a test lab environment, right? And they're like, no, I did it right on my laptop. And I'm like, get it out of here. Yeah.
Mistake number one.
Yeah, I when I was traveling years ago, I was in Costa Rica, and I met a girl, and she worked for the Canadian government, and her job was to like, they don't censor stuff, but all these incoming packages that are like videotapes and stuff like that, they do check to make sure it's not child porn and different types of, illicit behavior. So she's like, the average lifespan of that job is about 2 to 4 years max, because people are so traumatized in the amount of time, the stuff that she's seen. And like, she was awesome, but yeah, she was a little quirky, I'd say. And she's like, no, but you don't understand what I've seen. I know what goes on. And on the other side, like it comes across the borders all the time. Yeah. And, and we only see a percentage of it. So, you don't want to be there. Like it's not a good place.
No, there's no protection either. I think the biggest problem right now is the internet is so disparate, and it's a global issue. It's not just a Tennessee issue. It's not just a New York issue. It's not just a U.S. issue. It's a global fucking issue. We need a global court to take care of global fucking crimes. The problem we have right now is that as hackers, and I'm sure pedophiles are the same way, they know where they can operate, under which law will be the least persecution or prosecution, and how much jail time each area that they want to operate in will deliver. It's why you still had the Russian business network for years, because that was the place to go commit crimes, whether it be banking or hacking, whatever. We knew that was a safe network. And I think that there's a lot of places now, data centers especially, that have catered to kind of the underground. You're starting to see government and law enforcement start to crack open that vault and say, hey, look, you've been hiding behind this badge way too long.
Yeah. That's crazy too, because like a couple of years ago, I was trying to build an engine that did a predictive threat analytics on critical infrastructure. And like I had it up and I had it running, and there was a guy that was on your show before. He got to see it work in like its prime. And just like the amount of bad stuff that it was collecting, like in near real time. People were like, I had no idea. I had one guy from one government entity that's like, yep, that's what we see every day,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's sad. And it's not getting better. Look at the way the Russian-Ukraine went face to face, and the Russian soldiers were hitting up females on dating apps, finding out their location, finding out, if they had a boyfriend. Was a boyfriend serving in the military? Where was he at? Where was he located? And same thing with the Russians finding out that there were foreign military at that one army base just by picking up their IMSI information from their cell phone. Tools that we use as hackers all the time, and they're using it in war to eliminate entire bases. So, I mean, just being able to control the internet, how the things that happen and the crimes that occur, I think is going to be impossible. However, we can do a better job at protecting kids. I think that we do, as an industry, we do a really shitty job of protecting kids. And I agree. I don't think there's enough leaders in the industry that go out and actually talk about it. I think it's one of those taboo things that we all have kids, we're all parents, we all know that things are scary. No, most people don't know just how scary they are. And I think as an industry, we probably need to be more vocal about it. And I really appreciate, Alex, you going out and doing that every day. It's super important, and there's not enough people doing it.
Yesterday I was at the in each country, so it is, it's getting more difficult. I do believe that they're getting well funded because they are criminals, right? So, but unfortunately, the people that are trying to combat this, because I got the same kind of answer you did, Mike, about, here's all these things. I handed some check fraud stuff to a cop, and it was like a Craigslist thing. And I had the guy come in. It's like, I explained everything, and I'm like, I want this guy to come pick up this furniture. It was like one of those, I'll give you more than it's worth kind of thing. And he's like, oh yeah, we don't have time. And yeah, don't worry about that. And I'm like, what do you mean don't worry about it? I'm like, he's like, well, that guy probably isn't involved. I'm like, well, probably, but I have him on the hook. All I need you to do is show up and then do whatever you need to do. I'm trying to help your investigation. But he's like, yeah, but the detective already has 100 other cases just like that. That's a problem. How do we fund good cops, I guess, and that's the hard thing, because right now we have a huge division in the United States for sure, and other countries are having this. There is a massive division among everyone about everything right now. And it's, the people that are truly are the kids, right? They're the ones getting hurt the worst because nobody's paying attention. I mean, I think in the 90s, we were yelling about Teletubbies, and that's not what we need to be yelling about. We need to be talking about these things because they're those are the kids that are getting hurt right now. And, you're right. So thank you for bringing it up. It's horrible and horrific. So, but yeah, at the same time, it needs to be talked about.
But it's one of those topics that people dance around to, and it drives me nuts. Like at a security conference, you'll hear stuff about OSINT. You'll hear stuff about, how we track so-and-so, or we track down this ransomware actor. But you never hear about, this is how we track down this horrible pedophile that, had been operating for 13 years out of his basement. You don't hear that stuff anymore. And that's why I'm kind of concerned. Are we not catching those guys anymore? Or is that old news and nobody cares? Because if that's the case, then we have a bigger problem.
Yeah, one of the things that I found when I first started doing this that was a little concerning was the first time I approached law enforcement and I was like, hey, I know about this guy. This is what he's doing online. it was like, follow me, sir, to this back room. We're going to sit you down at a conference table and we're just going to interrogate you. And I'm like, here's my screenshots. Here's word for word screenshots of what said. Like, you can clearly see I did not break any laws. Why are you treating me like a criminal? And then 2 or 3 hours go by and I leave. Nothing gets solved. And essentially they're saying, we have so many cases. Well, I'm going to go back to my house. I'm going to do your case for you. And I'm going to do it faster than you can do it or anybody can do it. And I'm going to come back with all the evidence, because that's how we're built. Like, our community is built. Like, we're workhorses, online. So I go back to this guy and I have like 200 pages. Not only do I have his address, I have like Google Map photos of his house. I have a house layout from like a realtor site, just in case if they got to like kick the door in, like all this stuff. And he's like flipping through it and his eyes just keep getting bigger and bigger. And I'm like, oh yeah, if you like flip to the red tab, those are all the people that he associates with online. Dude opens it up, he looks at it, he gets about halfway down the page and he stops and he goes pale. And I was like, oh, you guys probably have an investigation going on that guy. I was like, yeah, I already looked up all the information on all those people too. And like hand it over and they're like, thanks. And then like, you don't hear anything. And then a couple weeks go by and you see it in the news and it's like, that's cool. But law enforcement agencies, military, they need to get rid of that like interrogation method. I'm trying to like do my job as an American and, protect my neighbors. And you're wanting to interrogate me like I'm a criminal over it. Like,
well, that's the whole mindset too. That's the way they operate. Like this morning, no bullshit. This morning, I was going to go get some x-rays done for the VA, walk outside my building downtown. And I look down the street in front of the FBI building and there are 3 cops, very large cops, probably over 6 foot, very robust, look like they played for Tennessee. And then there was a little lady with a stick. And I was like, okay, this is a little strange. You got 3 huge cops. It's early in the morning and they're surrounding this woman with a stick. Well, I looked a little bit closer and that stick was a walking cane. She was fucking blind. And here are the cops that have stopped her. And I just noticed the body position, the way they presented themselves, hands on their hips, hands on their holster, grabbing their bulletproof vest, just, I'm big type body posture. And here's this meek little lady who can't see what they're doing anyway. She's blind. But I guess what happened was the fact that she had a sign and she was asking for help and she needed money and she was blind. They put those things together, and here are these 3 huge cops stopping this one woman who's probably 4'11", while there's people right down the street that are fighting in front of a convenience store where all the homeless people hang out. And it's like, that's the mentality that some cops get, is they put on the badge and they think, okay, now I have to become this swollen person who needs to demand respect. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine who was a cop one time. I said, instead of demanding respect and carrying yourself like you're going to steal respect, how about earning it? Like, how about sitting down with people and talking to them like human beings? But just like we're trained to look at scenarios and stuff on the internet and analyze packets and ones and zeros, and that's what we know. But there's a lot of us who don't have people skills at all. The same thing with policemen. They're trained to be, interrogators and to be good cop, bad cop and push the limits. And they don't know anything outside of that. They don't know how to operate outside of those confines. So when someone like me or you goes to the cops and says, here's all the information, help me. The way that they're probably seeing it is, here's all the information, get off your lazy ass. I know you don't know what you're doing, but here's this case. That's probably how they take it. Oh, yeah. Just like if a cop came to me and started talking about cybersecurity, I'd probably be like,
well, one of the interesting things is when I did some stuff with the military, like when we were doing the war on terror was really kicking off. I had identified like a lot of really bad stuff online without going into a bunch of detail. But this bad stuff was going to happen to some people unless if some people intervened. And I went to the military and I was like, hey, like I found this online, strictly doing research, but I need to talk to you about it. We're not going to talk to you.
Gun clearance.
Yeah, pretty much. And they're like, but we'll take your information. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to give you my information if you're not going to talk to me.
Right.
And excuse me, we ended up talking, I don't know, for maybe almost 6 hours. You know, once they had to have their higher ups come down, like the military police showed up, CID showed up. Like, I mean, it was pretty intense with the people that were there. And I explained to him, I mean, I went into detail on where I found the information, who was talking about it, like what these maps were that I had. And as soon as I pulled out the maps, the whole tone of the room changed.
Oh, yeah.
And because they knew what those were. I had no idea what they were at that time. And they went into detail explaining to me what they were. And it was like, after that, it was like, thank you, Mr. Berta. Have a great day. Like, if we need anything else, we'll be in contact. And I was like, well, that, you know, I just spent all day here, but all right, cool. Sure. I don't know what else I can give you. And within a couple of days, like I get a call from the Army and they're like, hey, like, can you come down? And like, we need to talk. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I mean, after that, their tone changed. I'm sure they did tons of background checks on me and everything in that time period. But like, that's an issue, you know, that people are going to run into, and we still run into. I do a lot of work with law enforcement because I'm a first responder as a firefighter. And like what you were talking about, you know, the big old macho guys, like standing there, like I've seen that. But I guess I'm lucky enough, like where I live, the police officers here are awesome. Like they'll bend over backwards for you. Like one of our guys here, a lady, she blew a tire on the side of the road, didn't have a spare, needed new tires. He noticed all of her tires were bald.
Bought her new tires. I saw that. Bought
her brand new tires for her car. Didn't ask for any money back. He didn't even give her his name. Like, I mean, it was, I'll have it towed for you by one of our guys down at the auto shop. You go eat lunch across the street, put brand new tires on it, and then brought it right back to her and left. Didn't ask anything. I mean, those are the type of people, you know, law enforcement. I also live in a small town, so that we see, but you know, you go to these larger towns and it's not like that. And I've got to work with some of those people where like, it's like, oh, you see my badge, it's so shiny, like whatever. And it's like, dude, like I just break in the computers and do computer stuff. Like I could buy like 20 of those online, you know? So
even your uniform.
Yeah.
May not fit, but I can buy one.
Yeah.
No, I just think that, you know, with law enforcement, you're going to have your good, your bad, and your ugly in every group. And when you look at a group like law enforcement, it's so large. When you talk about industries, it's probably one of the largest industries, just because of what they do. And of course, you're going to have good, bad, and ugly in those. Same thing with any group. It's just, you can't avoid it. It's just human nature. But, you know, one thing I think that we're missing too, as a society, I remember as a kid watching, what was it, Unsolved Mysteries. And then there was another one with the father who had a crime show. I think it was called Most Wanted or something like that. And his son was actually a victim of being abducted when he was a kid. And so you don't see that on TV anymore. You don't see those primetime television shows that, you know, they're looking for criminals or they're actively doing this. Like that's gone away. Like Cops isn't even on anymore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think there's a lot of things lacking. And when you look at politics, when you look at the country in general, I think the media has a lot to do with the trash that we see. The major news outlets, all they do is try to push the media and the news that's going to further their platform. Fox News, CNN, all that stuff is politically driven. You know, I always tell people, for lack of better terms, this is state-run media. Right? Don't get me wrong. The only time you get independent is when you have podcasts like this or Joe Rogan or whoever that speak their mind that goes against that. But I think the media is responsible for a lot of desensitizing kids. I think it is responsible for the lack of parenting. I think a lot of what the media has done has separated people instead of bringing them together. And when you watch the news now, I mean, it's all about separation division. And that's one way a government, it's not a secret to know that first thing government wants to do to keep control is divide and conquer, right? Don't get us all on the same page.
Yeah, that's when everybody's the most dangerous,
Exactly. So tell me what you do outside of your many hats. Like, what do you do to relax?
Oh, that's a great question. So I do a lot of 3D printing, a lot. So let's see. Hopefully it will show up. But
nice. I like it.
Little gizmo. Yeah,
that's awesome.
So I do a lot of that, and I give a lot of them away. So people will message me and they'll be like, "Can you make me this?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." And then I'll paint it and I'll ship it to them. And I get enjoyment out of it. It's a good way for me to relax. So I do a lot of that and off-roading, just country life, fishing. This is going to sound weird, and it's not work related, but a lot of innovating. Like behind me in my closet, there are a couple servers, and I try to build new technologies. Like I've had people tell me, "Oh, you can't build that. Like the technology's not here." Well, let me prove you wrong.
Right. Exactly. 3D printing is awesome.
Yeah, I like my whole sidewall. I have 3 regular 3D printers, and then I have a resin printer, and they're running like 24/7.
I have a question for both of you, actually, real quick. So, did either of you do the like D&D figurine painting back in the day?
I did.
Yeah, I love those were really cool, but I didn't do a ton of them, but I just was curious.
I'm actually doing those now. I'm not doing D&D, but I'm printing chess sets. So
that's awesome.
Printed one that was Egyptian undead versus alive, and then now I'm doing Star Wars, the Empire versus the Rebels.
So that's awesome. I've been printing a lot of RC car parts.
Really?
For people, I guess it's like a whole untapped market for those out there that are looking for a niche market, RC car parts. But I don't own an RC car, so I print them. I'm like, yeah, I hope that's right. Throw them in a box and send them out, and everybody seems to like them.
That's awesome.
It's expensive. I had a buddy of mine in Florida. He got really into them and was taking them out to the tracks. And those it's a very expensive hobby because you're constantly having to replace those parts. So that's an awesome, that's a niche market for sure.
Yeah. People will reach out and they'll be like, I scanned this thing. And I'm like, well, what is it? And they'll tell me it's some part in their RC car. Can you print it for me? And they'll tell me the percentage and everything. And I'm like, how do you know about this?
Like infill percentage?
Yeah. Infill, use these supports because I heard these supports will damage it. And I'm like, okay. And I'll do it. And it comes out great. And I'll shoot it to them. And then they're like, oh yeah, man, this thing works. It's flawless. My car is 5% faster because the infill, I'm like, I don't know how you know all that.
About it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking $600 to $1,000 for a car and constantly replacing those. And they usually have 2 or 3. Yeah, it's a crazy hobby, but I mean, it's really fun, but yeah.
So is 3D printing. I have 2, I don't even have the setup he has. I have 2 Ender Crealities or Creality Ender 3s, and I keep them running 24/7. But for me, it was just printing shit that I wanted that didn't want to go buy. A bunch of Gothic lanterns. So I started doing all these Gothic lanterns. I've got them hanging up all over my apartment stuff. But 3D printing is a perfect mix of art and technology, I think. Mm-hmm. And the things you can do is I've run both of mine with Octopi, and I've got the apps on my phone where I can adjust and tune on the fly. There's so many things you can do with it. And the fact of the future of 3D printing, I think is so exciting and so cool. How cool is it that they can start printing fucking human organs with a 3D printer? That's amazing. So I wanted a piece of that. I've been waiting for probably about 10 years to buy my first printer because back when it first came out, they were $10,000 a piece. And those were for the itty bitty ones that didn't print shit.
I have one of those tiny ones. It sits in my closet. Yeah, it sits in my closet, collects dust. And then I have the Ender 3, the Ender 5 Pro, and then not Monoprice, a Anycubic resin printer. Nice. And it prints small stuff, but it works. But with the printing body parts, funny story, I had my knee rebuilt after like many years of just trashing my joints and stuff. And I was in the hospital, and my first consult, they're like, yeah, we're going to get in there and put this stuff in your knee. You'll feel better. I'm like, no. And he's like, what do you mean no? I was like, I want a robot leg or like a 3D printed leg. And he's like, no. So I go back a couple days later after all my test results come back, and they're like, yeah, we're going to do this. I'm like, look, dude, like I found the STL file online. Like I can print a new knee and I can get somebody to CNC cut the rest of it. Right. And he was like, no. And the day of my knee surgery, because I was in a lot of pain, I had shredded like everything in my knee. And, they were like, drawing the cut here, don't cut here. Yeah. And I drew like robot leg and a little like Terminator face. And the doctor came in. He's like, yeah, we've been over this like 100 times. So they're wheeling me back into the OR. And I'm like, so you got your 3D printers fired up? And all I remember is, let's go ahead and put him to sleep now. And I was just like,
that's awesome.
I wanted my robot leg, but
I don't blame you, man. I had my knee not reconstructed, but 2 ACL replacements. And what I found was the hardware that they use in your knee is not a whole lot different than the hardware you can buy at like Lowe's or Home Depot. So yeah, I think 3D printing would be a great idea. Alex, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. We definitely have to have an episode 2. Because there's so many other things we need to cover that we weren't able to cover in this hour. But I definitely want to have you back. So work with Kim and let's make that happen.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
You blew me away. I've been waiting to for this podcast. I mean, obviously been connected with you for a while, but at the same time, I mean, all the stuff that you just we just went over. Yeah, there definitely needs a second episode. That's amazing.
Yeah, we've actually been talking for a couple of years now on LinkedIn, and we've been tossing around the idea of having him on the show, and we've kept in contact. But then when you said, yeah, Alex Bird is going to be on Friday, I was like, about time.
Yeah. I know my schedule has been nuts, and there's a lot that's happening online right now, keeping us busy. So
yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I appreciate it. And, any last words or anything to pass on?
Thank you guys for having me on, and never stop innovating, and don't let anybody tell you that something can't be done, because it can be.
Absolutely, 100%. All right, well, I will. Until next time, I hope everybody stays safe, and don't forget to do your cybersecurity awareness training. I know that's coming up. So, anyways, see you guys next time. Have fun. Bye, guys.
We are back. Next up, we've got the lab from Gitlab. This is Gitlab's monthly installment featuring Brendan O'Leary telling us all about what's happening over at Gitlab. As always, Brendan's got a lot to say, so let's let him get to it. Let's roll it now.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Lab, a monthly show where we look at the latest and greatest developments in software developments, DevOps, and the cloud. I'm your host, Brendan O'Leary, and I'm coming to you from a relatively sunny, a little rainy Annapolis, Maryland, on the East Coast of the United States. And for those who don't know me, I'm a developer evangelist at GitLab, which means I get to talk to amazing folks throughout the software engineering space about what it really means to get code shipped to production. So there's kind of two main topics we're going to talk about today. As always, we're going to talk about the latest GitLab release, which is GitLab 14.10. But we're going to especially focus on GitLab's expanded Dora metrics, which we'll get into later in the episodes. But first, as always, let's dive into my favorite updates from GitLab 14.10. And the first is better compliance by reporting individual merge request violations. So now the overall compliance report can highlight any individual and every individual merge request and what violation were made there, which allows you to see a history and patterns of violations over time for projects in a group. And that's a huge improvement over the previous version, which only showed the latest MR that had one or more violations. This new version allows you to see that history and pattern and either adjust the team's practices or adjust the compliance settings to make it make sense for your team and for what is required of you. So the reporting helps identify what caused the violation, who was involved, when it happened, and which merge request exactly caused it. You can also now see the approval violations for merge requests and filter and sort through all of those quickly to find what you're really looking for. We've also expanded the operator-based runner management for non-OpenShift Kubernetes clusters. So in 13.10, we released the GitLab runner operator for Red Hat OpenShift and for their container platform on Kubernetes. That release provided OpenShift users with the ability to automate and manage all of the operator framework, the runner with the operator framework, to simplify the ongoing management of their runners in an OpenShift Kubernetes cluster. The GitLab runner operator helps users automate and simplify the management of their runners. And in 14.10, we expanded that use of the GitLab runner operator to all non-OpenShift Kubernetes clusters. So since previously this was only available for OpenShift Kubernetes clusters, it's now available for any Kubernetes cluster, and it's available on operatorhub.io. And this is really exciting for me because it expands the GitLab runner to Kubernetes of any distribution and any part of their open source platform, Kubernetes, in addition to making it possible to manually trigger, an incident response or some issue when it comes to operating your runners. We also have the ability now to stream audit events via the user interface. So users, many of them want to manage their audit logs in some third-party auditing system. And we can already stream those audit events to the service that can receive structured JSON. And previously, setting this up had to be done through the API. So in 14.10, we added that to the user interface so that group owners can use the GitLab UI to set up those streaming audit events, add remove destinations for streaming those events to, and see a list of all the locations that the audit events currently are being streamed to. So this new feature is underneath the Streams tab in the Group Audit Events page. There's also the ability to escalate manually created incidents. So GitLab Incident Management is set up to trigger escalation policies for new alerts that can be used by on-call responders to manage incidents. Previously, when a user created an incident manually, there was no way to create an associated alert and page on-call responders. In 14.10, we enabled paging on manual created incidents as well, and responders have the ability to acknowledge the page on incidents or restart the paging by resetting the status to triggered, just like you can for alerts. On top of those, there are 25 new additions to GitLab in GitLab 14.10. So I encourage you to take a look at GitLab's latest blog posts to see what features you can start using on the One DevOps platform. And again, the fastest way to do that, the way I would do it if I needed to go find it right now, is I would just Google GitLab 14.10, and I'd find the blog post right there and get all the information I need. And that blog post is great because it's got links to all the documentation, the specific issue and merge request that led to the change. It also lists our MVP, who's our most valuable contributor for the month. And so definitely take a look at that. And if you're interested in contributing to GitLab open source, please let me know. Hit me up on Twitter at O'Leary Crew or elsewhere, and I'll help you out. And finally, I'm super excited to share this. GitLab has finally completed its coverage of the Dora Metrics with the API being added for change failure rate tracking. As you know, Dora, the DevOps Resource Institute, and their metrics, the 4 big metrics that they talk about tracking, are something that's near and dear to my heart and should be near and dear to yours if it's not already. Right? The Dora metrics help drive DevOps value for business, so they understand that executives and everyone can understand that, what the investments in a DevOps transformation are really doing. What's the return on investment of the processes they are implementing? And what are the tools, the tools they purchased? Are they working for them? Are they making things better or worse? Changes in these metrics could easily become and should become KPIs for your teams. Change failure rate is the most recent one that has been added, which measures the percentage of deployments that cause a failure. This tied with deployment frequency, lead time for changes, time to restore service. Those are the 4 metrics that help organizations measure their performance of development and DevOps teams. But also, those are the 4 metrics that are most critically tied, and we've seen this in the data from the Dora team, critically tied not only to DevOps and software outcomes and building better software more securely and getting them to market faster, but also reaching organizational goals. They've been shown to have a causal relationship with organizations reaching their goals overall. So as DevOps processes continue to mature, we all hope they do, the Dora metrics will make it simple for leaders to measure overall progress. It's important for DevOps teams to keep track of key performance indicators that enable their teams to identify areas that we can improve, right? After all, it's all about continuous improvement. For example, technical debt can accumulate, right? And in the absence of metrics, we don't see the actual harm that each incremental piece of technical debt gives when it comes to, deployment frequency or the lead time for changes. But if we can see that trend overall, we can identify that and express very clearly the business value of, tackling technical debt that we've brought on. So thanks again so much for joining me. We've had a lot of key improvements at GitLab 14.10. We want to find out more about those. Again, you can go to the GitLab blog. We've got GitLab, GitLab 15 release coming out soon. I'm really excited for that. I'll also be in Valencia, Spain for KubeCon EU. If you're there, please come up, find me, say hi. I have a mask on, so we'll maybe look from the nose up, but that's okay. But I'm very happy to meet you all. If you're in Valencia, I'm hard to miss, the big, loud Irish guy, well, Irish American, and I would love to meet you. So please just say hi, introduce yourself. Let me know you saw this episode of the lab, or you follow me on Twitter, or you've seen my tweets, or whatever it is. You love GitLab. You want a new GitLab shirt with a new logo. Whatever it is, come say hi. So thanks again for watching me today. You can find me on the internet at O'Leary Crew, most places. That's OLEARYCREW. Twitter's where I spend most of my time, so you can find me there. If you have an idea for a future show or want to discuss anything from today's episode in more detail, I'd love to do it there. Again, the lab is produced every month. And so thanks again for joining us. Stay safe, and I'll see you next month in the lab. Bye-bye.
Looking for a live conference focused on the tools, technologies, and practices most important to your business? Innotech conferences are live one-day business and technology conferences highlighting the latest in trends for IT leaders, developers, and IT professionals. Each event combines education, innovation, peer-to-peer networking, and the latest technology and business solutions for a diverse IT-focused audience. Innotech conferences occur throughout the year in strategic regional locations, bringing together technology professionals from various industries to learn about the solutions, practices, and tools impacting their day-to-day work and gain insight into what's to come. Presenters at Innotech conferences are selected and curated to ensure each session provides the most up-to-date and relevant information without any hype. Whether you're interested in digital transformation, cybersecurity, cloud, IT leadership, or DevOps, Innotech conferences deliver. 2022 events are scheduled to be held in Austin, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Houston, and Washington, D.C. Innotech conferences are produced by TechStrong Live and powered by TechStrong Group.
All right, we are back. Next up, we've got our Something Old segment. This is from the recent Secure Software Summit virtual event. This one features Adolfo Garcia Veitia, who is the software engineer at ChainGuard. His presentation is titled What an S-Bomb Can Do for You. And he dives into the nuances of software bills of material, and he also shares his experiences on how to use S-bombs effectively in the software release process. Great presentation, a lot of takeaways in here. I highly encourage you to check it out. So let's go ahead and roll it now.
Hello, my name is Adolfo Garcia, and I am a software engineer with ChainGuard Inc. We are a company devoted to software supply chain security, and we are on a mission to make all the software in the world secure by default. Today, we are going to be talking a little bit about what an SBOM is, the benefits that you can get by running and consuming, producing SBOMs along with your software releases, and some of the state of the tooling out there, and maybe take a look at what the future holds for us. Okay, so first, a little bit of background. So even though there's been a big push to produce and consume SBOMs in the last few months, we saw that there's still some confusion out there about what an SBOM is, the benefits it can give you, how it overlaps with other technologies. And we wanted to start reaching out and sharing some of our findings and some experience about using and producing SBOMs. So what is an SBOM? This is the official definition from the NTIA.gov website, which basically defines an SBOM as a nested inventory that lists all of the components that go into making a piece of software. So in order to understand this idea a little bit better, let's try to do an analogy. So if you think about whenever you get a box shipment in the mail, say, for example, you order a new computer, you'll notice that it always has a little packing slip attached to the side of it. That packing slip tells you a couple of things about the shipment you just received. So the first one is it'll give you some information about the shipment itself, so some metadata. It'll tell you where the package came from, when it was shipped, if it traversed some checkpoints like international customs or things like that. Then it'll tell you things about the contents. So it'll tell you what you can expect to find inside of the box. It'll tell you what these things look like sometimes. For example, it'll tell you if you have a piece of red clothing or blue clothing. It'll help you figure out if everything that you should find inside of the box is in there, the number of pieces and things like that. And it also help you determine if the things are in good shape. Did that vase that you order get in one piece, or is it supposed to be in multiple pieces? Did it get corrupted in any way? Or maybe if you order an expensive handbag somewhere, you don't want it to get replaced by a cheap knockoff on the way to you, right? Then it'll tell you some other things about the manufacturing process that brought your item to life. So, for example, if you've ever ordered a Dell computer, you notice on the packing slip that it'll list each of the components inside of it. It'll tell you the kind of memory, the CPU that it uses, things like that. And you can use the packing slip to verify that the pieces inside of your computer actually match what is listed in the packing slip. And then it'll tell you some information about the manufacturing run that produces your computer. So, for example, if the manufacturer finds out that there was a batch of bad computers, it may be able to locate your computer, and you can find via the serial number, the lot number, if your computer is faulty in any way. So an SBOM allows you to answer some similar questions about your software. For example, it'll allow you to answer the same as the packing slip. It'll allow you to tell about the origin and the provenance of your shipment. So where did it came from? Can I download this software again? From where, and what can I expect from it? And you can use this kind of information to plug it into the security tools to check dependencies and the base image, the images that you use to run your containers, and it'll allow you to find if they have security vulnerabilities in them. Then you can also gain information by automating the SBOM consumption and generation during your CI runs. You can generate an SBOM when you run it in your CI/CD pipeline, and you can also check SBOMs during your CI/CD runs to check the components that you are actually pulling in. Then it'll help you resolve some licensing questions. So you can check for compliance. For example, if you are pulling dependencies that have like really strict regulations and restrictions that you cannot allow into your project, and SBOM will allow you to figure that out. It will also allow you to find out if you can release your project as open source, for example. Maybe some of the dependencies that you are pulling in restrict you from doing so, and the SBOM will let you know if you can do it or not. Okay, so next up, the two main SBOM standards. There are two competing SBOM standards, both of them really good, and both of them are competing, but in a friendly way, always sharing knowledge and best practices among the projects. The first one is Hpdx. It's a project from the Linux Foundation. It has been under development over 10 years now. And the second one is CycloneDX, which is a project of the OWASP Foundation. Today, we're going to be focusing more on the Hpdx side of things, which, by the way, is already an international standard. So what is Hpdx? Hpdx is the standard to write SBOMs, and it's designed to describe software releases in terms of packages and files, which are described in a document. These two elements are related between each other by a rich set of relationships that give semantic meaning to what you find inside of the SBOM. Then once you define your components, you can output the SBOM in a number of different formats like tag value, JSON, RDF, YAML, XML. The current version in use is 2.2.1, and we're expecting version 3.0 to be released really soon. Like I said before, it's an ISO standard already. So let's take a look at what the actual SBOM looks like. Like we said before, the SBOM is a document. So if you start with a clean document, the document itself already has some information about itself listed. So it has an ID and a namespace, which allow it to exist in a unique way in the internet. It has a name, generally the name of the project. It states the Hpdx version that has the time of creation, who produced it, the tooling used to it, and so on. So inside of the document, you can start by the blank document and you start adding things to it. The first thing that you may add to it is a package. So you can add a single package and not have anything inside of the package defined. This will allow you to state some things like, for example, the package version, its licensing, the version and the name, things like that. Or you can also add a package and also list the things inside of the package. A package can group together files and also other packages, and some of the contents have their own metadata listed in there as well. You can also add to the SBOM single files. This can be listed at the top of the document. And like we were saying before, the most important part of the SBOM is its ability to relate all of its elements with several different kinds of relationships. So if you see here, if we can this fictional SBOM lists that package number 1 was generated by the files inside of package number 2, and then file number 3 has a single test, which is the external file number 1. So if you want to take a look at how the SBOM looks like, this is a little bit of a sample of just a snippet of an SBOM, Hpdx SBOM. I generated this from the Istio service mesh source code, just to take a look at how it looks like. We'll see during the demo a little bit more about this. So just to recap, the 2 kinds of elements inside of an SBOM. There's file, which lists all of the file metadata, like its name, the type, the checksums that detail its contents, the license, and some other attributions like who the copyright, and you can add notes to it, so on. And then there's packages that group other packages and files, and packages can have a name, a version, a file name, the supplier, so who am I pulling this package from, and the originator. And you can also have a URL of that tells you where you can download it if you want to get it again for checking or things like that, and some licensing information. And finally, there's the relationships. Like said before, Hpdx defines over 40 relationship kinds that can give like really semantic richness to the document, and beyond just a simple dependency relationship among them, you can express whole lots of other things. So I prepared a little demo to demonstrate some of the things that we've been going through here. So let me switch my screen. All of the demos that I'm going to go to do today are done using the Kubernetes BOM tool, which is freely available. It is a tool that was produced in order to create the SBOMs for Kubernetes. It is a tool that will allow you to create Hpdx documents that accurately describe Go projects. So right here, I'm inside of a sample project of mine. This is a little project that I like to use to demonstrate the bill of materials capabilities of BOM. So if you look at it, it's like a fairly standard project that has some Go packages, produces a binary, and it also produces a container image, which is a GitHub action. So while you can run the BOM tool by itself and pass it command line flags to define your BOM, it is really designed to be run inside of a CI/CD system. So it's designed to be run as one of your steps in your pipeline and read from a configuration file that states what it should do. So let's take a look at how the configuration looks like. So let me make it a little bit bigger. So this is the documented, the configuration file for the tool. If you see here, it defines some of the aspects for the bill of materials that's going to be produced. It states the namespace, the license I'm using for the project. It also states the name of the SBOM, who created the bill of materials, and the artifacts I want to list in my SBOM. So if you see the artifacts list, I'm listing here four things to be defined in my SBOM. One, a directory, which is the actual source code for the project, which is the current directory. And I'm asking here BOM to analyze the Go modules to fetch all of the dependency information. Then once I run my build, it'll output a binary here, which is called miniprow. And I'm going to add miniprow as a single binary to the SBOM. Then I'm adding the README file as a single file, and I'm also specifying the SBOM tool to add a container image here, which will go and fetch from the registry and describe it in the SBOM. So first, I'm gonna run my build here. and it's going to build the binary and also build and push the container image, which is it's pushing it to the GitHub repository. So if I see, so now that I have my image, I can run my SBOM. So I can go and generate my SBOM by using BOM generate, and I'm passing it the configuration file, which is .sbom, and I'm going to write that information to a file called sbom spdx. So a couple of things are going to happen here. So first, it'll read the configuration, then parse all of the dependencies of my Go project. Then it'll go and fetch all of the Go modules. Actually, right now it's using them from a local copy. Since I just ran the build, I have local copies of all the modules, and it'll analyze them for their licenses here. And then he'll fetch the container image from the registry and describe each of its layers inside of the BOM of the bill of materials, and then add the single files to the bill of materials. So right now, if I take a look, I have the file generated inside of here, and it's written. So one of the advantages of the BOM tool is that you can use it to see and explore a little bit the document that was just produced, and it'll allow you to draw an outline of the document. So if we see what came out, this is the actual structure of the document I just produced. So my document has two packages, which are first the source code directory here, which lists all of its files. All of the metadata of each of these files is listed in the SBOM, the checksums, licenses, and all of that. And also all of the dependencies. So the main package miniprow has files and packages inside of it. And then at the top level of the document, there's another package which represents the container image. That container image is one tag, and that tag has one SHA inside of it, which corresponds to the AMD64 image I just produced, which has two layers listed in there. And then finally, it describes two files, single files. One is the binary and the README. So this is, as you can see, producing an SBOM is quite an easy task, and you can use it like fairly easy. So this is a demo of the automation that you can do. I wanted to show another feature that you can do. So here, now I've switched tabs and I'm inside of a clone of the Istio service mesh code. Istio is a service mesh for Kubernetes, and it's a Go project. I chose this one because it's a fairly large and complex project, which we can use to demonstrate the following features. So let me first remove the current SBOM, and let's generate one for the current Git clone. So this will take a little bit more because Istio is a fair larger project than the demonstration project I just used. So it's fetching all of the dependencies for Istio, and it's since I haven't built the project, it is now fetching all of the Go modules from its current repositories and listing them in the SBOM. And I have my SBOM now. So if I draw the outline of the SBOM, you'll see that it's a huge SBOM compared to the other one. So this one lists like literally thousands of files and hundreds of dependencies down here. Using the tool, I can define so I can constrain the depth of the visualization to understand it a little better. So I just generated an SBOM document which has this name, which is an automatically generated name because I didn't specify one. And it lists one package called Istio, which is the same name of the current directory I'm in, and it defines 4,000 relationships inside of it. So it, among dependencies and the source code, we have 4,000 relationships, one-way relationships inside of the SBOM. Now, if I want, for example, to know the licensing information of the package, I can use BOM to explore a little bit more. So I can do BOM document license and then pass it the SBOM license. So using the license subcommand, what it allows me to know is, so I have one package, it's Hpdx ID, and it tells me that it is licensed under the Apache 2.0 license. That information came because BOM recognizes as a classifier that learns licenses and recognizes the licenses it finds inside of the source code repository. So this one, as we can see here, is licensed in Apache 2. So it matches this one here, but there's a caveat here. So the package, the Istio package, pulls 215 dependencies. And among them, there's 7 other different licenses. So using the same tool, I can explore the licensing information for the packages. So if I pass it the SBOM and a name of a package, it will print a licensing table describing all of the licenses and what the tool thinks is the most appropriate license for each of the dependencies. So if you want, you can also license. You can also specify other ways to get this. For example, you can get the licensing information in JSON if you want to feed that information to an automated tool further down your pipeline or another process. So I guess that's a little bit, that's features I wanted to demonstrate here. This is the link for the tool is going to be defined at the end of the presentation. So you saw that tool in action, but what is the future? So a nice trend that we're noticing as of a few months back is that some of the tools that release software, that compile software, that produce container images are starting to gain SBOM generating abilities. So if you're familiar with Go Releaser, which is a tool to compile and publish the artifacts of a build to GitHub, it just recently gained the ability to generate an SBOM describing the artifacts that you're releasing. Then there's KO, which is a tool to turn your Go source code into a container, and it also can generate and publish an SBOM describing the container image dependencies to the registry. And then finally, we, in the Kubernetes project, generated a little tool which is called Publish Release, which can also publish all of the artifacts of a release and then send the SBOM along with them. So we believe that we believe that this trend is going to be, we're going to be seeing this trend more and more among some of the tool makers and software release projects that are out there. And it basically means that more and more you're going to see that whenever you publish a software release, inadvertently, you're also going to be generating an SBOM model with it. And some of the current efforts are, like you saw in the licensing demo before this, are starting. So some of the efforts among SBOM tool makers are to really start giving the relationships that semantic meaning that they should have. Like you saw before, when you have a software release that describes its dependencies, we can now read the SBOM, follow the dependency relationship, and then extract the licensing information to provide custom reports that allow you to find out your compliance. So we think this year is going to be the year of the SBOM because you're going to see more maturing of tools like I just showed you, and it's going to be it's a perfect time for you to start generating your SBOM. So with that, I'd like to thank you. Again, my name is Adolfo Garcia Betia, and you can find me as Puerco almost anywhere, Twitter, GitHub, whatever. And here are links to the original blog post that I gave what's the origin of this talk, and a link to the Kubernetes BOM tool that I just showed you. Feel free to reach me if you have any questions about the tool or any of the techniques that I just showed on the demos. So that's it then. Thank you.
Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with the headlines. First up on DevOps.com is an article about data lineage, why it's so critical and why it's so darn difficult. Change introduces risk. It's one of those foundational principles of software development that most of us learn very early in our careers. Nevertheless, it always seems to keep cropping up in spite of those repeated life lessons. Our inability to foresee the impact of changes, even small ones, often leads to negative outcomes. As the complexity of interconnected IT systems has increased, the problem has grown worse. It's harder and harder to predict how even a small modification might impact systems upstream or downstream of the change. Data lineage accomplishes that, but it's extraordinarily difficult to do data lineage well. This article looks at why data lineage matters and what organizations can do to improve their data lineage for compliance, security, and good data hygiene. Also on DevOps.com, we have 15 ways in which software becomes a cyber threat. Software has made our lives much easier in so many ways. However, as we become more reliant on software, we also become more vulnerable to cyber attacks. This article explores 15 different ways that software can end up becoming a cybersecurity threat, ranging from poor password choices to drive-by downloads and even WordPress logins. The threats are real and they're relevant. But by understanding these risks, organizations can take steps to protect its employees and its business. In news, Noble 9 has released version 1.0 of an open specification for defining service level objectives, dubbed OpenSLO, and has defined a repeatable SLO methodology. The Service Level Objective Development Lifecycle methodology represents an effort to create a set of best practices for achieving and maintaining SLOs that are implemented as code within an application environment. Noble 9 is trying to spur greater adoption of SLOs by making available an open source SLO specification that defines a common interface for constructing SLOs across a Git-based workflow. Since OpenSLO's launch, more capabilities have been added, including a data source object that makes it easier to reuse connection details and makes creating SLOs less verbose. In addition, 3 alerts have been defined: alert condition, alert policy, and alert notification target. Noble 9 is also releasing an OpenSLO to Noble 9 converter to transition OpenSLO YAML files into Noble 9 YAML when required. All right, over on Container Journal, we have 5 things to consider when choosing a database. A database is the fundamental building block for any data-based initiative, as it is involved in all stages. Databases are used when collecting, storing, processing, and analyzing data. It is the silent, almost invisible component that drives business decisions, operational improvements, or simply keeps track of your inventory. As much as the database should be the invisible part of this, it is crucial to make the right choice. While it might look easy to select a suitable database, there are a few things to consider when making a choice. This article looks at 5 things you need to consider when selecting a database for your next data project. And we have a forward-looking article that considers what's next after cloud native. 7 years after the phrase first emerged, cloud native is the desired destination for the majority of organizations embarking on a digital transformation journey. But 7 years is a lifetime in technology, and it would be extremely naive to think that cloud native is the end of the story. Cloud native is a set of enabling technologies. It allows you to go faster, but it's not the goal. So what then is the goal? When it comes to helping companies achieve their cloud native ambitions, one of the most valuable tools to have is the Cloud Native Maturity Matrix. This can help organizations establish precisely where they are in their own journey toward cloud native, whether their starting point is waterfall, agile, or even no process at all. This article discusses the Cloud Native Maturity Matrix and how it can help map out a path for organizations as they transition to cloud native and then determine not only where they want to go from there, but also how to get there. All right, on Security Boulevard, the Open Source Security Foundation, or OpenSSF, outlined a plan to better secure open source software by focusing on 10 streams of investment that would, in total, require more than $150 million. The goal, which the foundation announced at the Open Source Software Security Summit 2, vulnerability discovery and remediation, and reduce the amount of time required to patch software. This article looks at those 10 streams of investment and what this plan could do to improve open source security in the future, as well as whether such a focus on the software supply chain security will advance the adoption of DevSecOps best practices. And finally, we look at how encryption can help restore cloud security integrity. Two of the most frequently mentioned challenges in cloud computing are data security and data privacy. There's concern that cloud service providers may collect and exploit customer data for their own gain, including the sharing of customer data with third parties. Data encryption can allay these anxieties, but the way most cloud services providers are using it falls short of providing complete data protection. That's where encryption fits in, most notably advanced encryption. Advanced encryption is an enabler, not just a security enabler, but a technology and a business enabler. It brings many monetary, brand, and efficiency benefits with it that some executives underestimate. Encryption is the basis for all other security measures. Without it, all the rest is pointless. There can be as many vulnerability trackers and endpoint security measures in place as a company wants. But if an attacker breaches the network and the data is in plain text, it's lost. This article parses out the value of encryption and ways in which organizations can evaluate encryption solutions. At the end of the day, you want a solution that lets you encrypt and process all of your data with near plain text performance in the safest environment. All right, that's it for the headlines. I will be back next time with a brand new batch. Until then, I hope everybody has a great day, and please, whatever you do, stay safe.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everybody, welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with Jane Wong, who is the VP of Security Products at Splunk. Jane, thank you so much for joining me today. Do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Very excited about this chat.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited to have you here because you're awesome, but also because I want to talk to you about the Splunk State of Security report that you guys just put out, or you putting out very soon. I'm not sure of the timing of it, but I'm interested in talking with you about that. And is this the first year that you guys have done this report?
No, we've done this before. It's an annual global research report, and it really examines the key issues that we hear organizations are facing today in security. But this year, we interviewed 1,200 security professionals.
Wow.
So it was a broad survey globally, and really got sort of big learnings from what folks answered, and that differed from years in the past.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And did you focus mostly on the technology, or did you focus on all aspects, a broader palette, if you will, of cybersecurity topics?
Yeah, all aspects. So organizations told us they were really struggling and seeing an increase in cyber attacks and ransomware. But what really showed up this year was they talked a lot about challenges the teams are facing, finding people to work in the security organization to fend off those attacks. So I'm going to hit you with some stats.
Go ahead, lay it on me.
And then we'll move on. 73% of the 1,200 people said workers had resigned, citing burnout, burnout. 53% said they cannot hire enough staff. 58% can't find people with the right skills. And that compounds itself because 70% who were still in roles said that because of the other folks leaving, more stuff was falling on their plate and they were getting burned out and had considered looking for another role. So this kind of all compounds. It's a really big problem.
Yeah, I keep hearing about it over and over and over again. So many organizations are struggling to hold on to their cybersecurity staff, and whether it's burnout or whether it's just their employees are getting filched by other companies who are also experiencing major staffing shortages with relation to cybersecurity professionals. It is a problem that I feel like it kind of blindsided us. We spent so many years talking about cybersecurity, but really maybe not talking about it enough. And now that it's become paramount for so many organizations, they're recognizing the importance of their cybersecurity professionals, and because of that, I think companies are now experiencing the fact that for so many years, I think security personnel never really felt as though they were valued as much as they really should have been, and so we're maybe seeing some of the repercussions of that. But were there other things that kind of came out in the report with relation to why there is such high staff turnover?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's aligned with the Great Resignation, so that's just kind of exacerbated what was happening. But there has been a shortage for years. I mean, security is a really, really growing field. The attackers are not slowing down. In fact, there's more attacks and new kinds of attacks beyond cyber criminals, nation state attacks, cyber warfare. We need to pay more and more attention, have more and more folks looking at these attacks and fending them off. But last year, with the Great Resignation, it just extended and exacerbated a problem that was already there. Mm-hmm. I speak to chief information security officers a lot, and I have a CISO advisory board. And what really surprised me in one of my recent cabs was we ask CISOs what they want to talk about. We have a survey, what's top of mind, what's pressing. It's not about Splunk products necessarily. Mm-hmm. They all said they wanted to talk to other CISOs about how the heck they were finding people and managing to keep their security operations center staffed. Such a big problem. And so we had this fascinating conversation for 45 minutes with each CISO kind of sharing things they were doing. One gentleman relocated his security operations center, the central organization, near a university that had a good cybersecurity program so that he could, pull people straight out of school and train them up. And he knew that within 2 years, those folks would go work somewhere else. He planned for that because he knew he wouldn't be able to keep them. They'd go somewhere else, like you say, filched, get more money, or move. But for the 2 years, he set up his whole program to help them be as productive as possible. And that's how he was keeping his security operations staff. But it was a problem for every single CISO on the call, so much so that they put it as the top thing they wanted to talk about with Splunk.
That's really fascinating, and I love to hear stories like what you just said about the moving the security operations center, because that's a pretty ingenious decision, and it's a great way for the CISO to really keep a pretty steady level of staff, I would say, because students right out of school, they're hungry, and that would be almost a gimme to know that you're going to be able to staff your organization that way right out of school. That was ingenious. So we kind of keep talking about this great staff shortage, but are there certain areas that you guys found out maybe certain levels of expertise that is more in demand than others? I mean, folks coming right out of college, I know they're probably demanding higher salaries than, in quote unquote regular times, but are there certain maybe levels like mid-level or senior level cybersecurity folks who are more in demand than others? Did you guys take a look at that at all?
I think that's definitely the case. And the reason for that is that many security operations teams, they're not using their tools to help automate response. So the reason folks are burning out, one is just too much work on plates, but the other is repetitive manual tasks that folks are doing over and over again. If you're investigating a potential phishing email and you want to find out if that's an attack against your company, you do the same set of steps pretty much every time to validate if that's a false positive, like not a threat or attack, or if it is a real attack. Like automating those steps just saves a junior analyst from having to do the same manual repetitive thing over and over. And then they can be freed up to learn how to become a higher level security expert and work on higher level attacks and higher level tasks. So because there's not enough automation in operations centers, folks are just caught in this hamster wheel trap of doing the same thing over and over again and can't grow to fill those more senior roles. So that's one big thing I would definitely say is a potential solution out of this, right? Automate the things that can be automated.
So along with that, though, I keep hearing stories about there being even an developer shortage, yet companies are very averse to hiring, folks right out of school, junior developers, because they want to have the expertise that a mid-level or a senior developer has, which means that there are still all of these roles that are left, these positions that are left open, but there's a whole passel of developers fresh out of school or fresh out of boot camp that can't seem to get a job. So do you think that organizations need to kind of relax their requirements? Like, I've got to have a mid-level or a senior level guy, and just recognize that if they want to fill these positions, they're going to have to, open their net basically and take a harder look at these younger junior level cybersecurity professionals or IT developers and help them kind of along their career path. Because if they, in my mind, if they invest the time and the energy in bringing them on board at a junior level, I would think that that there would be a little bit more dedication, if you will, with these cybersecurity professionals at the lower stage, if you will, the beginning of their careers.
Yeah. Man, I'm just passionate about this. I think we absolutely have to look at folks who don't necessarily have 10, 15 years IT security experience. We really have to open the lens. One of my personal passions, as well as bringing more junior folks in, is bringing more women into cybersecurity. So I'm in this organization called Q for the Loo, Charlene. This is kind of a funny one. Loo is restroom in England. I don't know. So you go to security conferences and there's no queue at all for the women. There's a queue for men all the way down the hall, right? Yep. There's a big long line. Most places, you go to a concert, you go to the theater, there's a line outside the women's loo. So there should be a line. I can't believe I'm arguing that there should be a line, but there should be a line. The reason there's no line is there are too few women in cybersecurity. There's just so much opportunity there. And I think that a lot of women don't apply, or junior folks, because they think, I don't have 10 years in IT. I don't have the background I need. I'm not a deep computer technology expert. I'm going to be bad at this. At core, security is just about looking at systems and finding the weaknesses in them. And I think a lot of women are natural born hackers because we're very good at finding the weaknesses in systems. I give this example to women I know about when my kids were younger. They would go through pants in like 3 weeks, and I was spending way too much money on pants. So, but I looked at this big box store. They gave you a discount. On Friday, the discount was double. If you bought something, they gave you a coupon to get an extra discount. And then there was another. If you stacked all these 4 discounts together, you could get pants for like $3 that should have been $40. So I just looked at that system, their pricing system, and hacked it. I think women are really good about that. That's exactly the kind of skill set we need in security. The way to stop attackers is to think about what they're going to do next. How are they going to get into an organization? Where are the weaknesses? And I think that's a really creative, imaginative way of thinking. It's a deeply curious way of thinking. And that is a more important prerequisite to me. It's something I always ask in interviews. Beyond just, do you have 10 years in IT? So to fill this shortage, that would be a great avenue that I'd love to see more security companies and security teams pursuing. Looking for people who think like attackers. I don't feel passionately about this at all. You can tell.
Well, I actually host a show here on TechStrong TV called Tech Strong Women, and we do talk about this quite a bit. And but we take it from the tack of those who are already in the industry, how they got to where they are, and kind of celebrating their successes. And it's amazing to me how many conversations we have with women who never started down this path, but that's where they've ended up, and their journeys are not done by any stretch of the imagination, but they offer up kind of some of their lessons learned along the way, and how mentorship and other tools that were available to them really did help them. So I'm behind you 100%. I think that organizations don't really look beyond the immediate when it comes to cybersecurity talent and IT developer talent as well. It's certainly exacerbated by cybersecurity because we've got some very real threats out there, and if we don't have the people to fill the positions, we're going to be in a world of hurt pretty soon. I mean, automation is great, and AI is great, but it really can only take us so far. So we really still do need many, many humans in the cybersecurity sector. Before we close things out, were there any other results from the survey that really kind of made you guys kind of stand up and say, I wonder why?
This was the biggest one for me that stood out as different. Like the increases in attacks I've been seeing over several years now. But seeing that they kind of tie together. Attacks increase, there's more to do, and there's fewer people to do it. The whole thing compounds and builds on each other. And like you say, it's leading us into very serious territory here. Like if we don't have enough people in the organizations that protect our infrastructure, our banking, our healthcare systems, right? We really need to help find people. We also need automation is one tool. The other is integration of tools, right? There are many, many tools in a typical security operations center. Again, manual disjointed work. The frontline analysts are bouncing from console to console, copying and pasting different pieces of an attack into different systems. It's so slow and manual. Technology has to help make that faster. Folks are, incented to find attacks quickly, to respond to them, and to shut down that attack vector. We need to help them do that really quickly by integrating tools, giving them the visibility they need, helping them respond in a really fast way. Automation is a key part of that, but there's a lot that technology vendors can do just to make that job easier. So with fewer people, you can do a lot more. So that's the other piece. It's on us as well as just finding people.
Yeah. Good point. Well, Jane, thanks very much for walking me through this. It's been a fascinating conversation, and I have a feeling we're going to be talking again in the future about this whole diversity and women in cybersecurity topic. I don't know. I'm just saying. I have a feeling it's going to be another one. So All right, great. Well, then I will. Yes, cue for the loo. We'll definitely set something up for that. So, but thank you very much for joining me today. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stay tuned.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hey, everybody. Happy Tuesday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with the webinars preview. I always tell you we have so many great webinars coming up on DevOps.com, Container Journal, and Security Boulevard. Well, here are 3 that I hope you will be able to join us, so please do mark your calendars. The first one is called Shift Left Done Right. This one is happening 18th at 11 a.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. This one is sponsored by Checkpoint. In today's world, all major processes are automated. Coding, build, testing, monitoring, deployment, and the compute layer. Servers come and go, and storage is allocated within minutes. The sheer complexity of keeping up with the pace of the entire software development lifecycle requires us to come up with a technology that can tame the complexity of security in such a rapidly changing tech world and enable more people to become security experts. In this webinar, we will discuss how organizations can shift security left while also making it technologically accessible. The second one is called Defending Against Emerging Ransomware Threats. This one is happening Monday, May 23rd at 1 p.m. Eastern on Security Boulevard. As ransomware attacks and attackers become more sophisticated, cyber criminal gangs will rely less on broad-based attacks and more on remote code execution using malware designed for specific targets. Cyber criminals who launch ransomware attacks are becoming much more efficient. So this editorial webinar features a lineup of all-star guests offering their perspective on the current security landscape and how organizations can best protect themselves against ransomware. All right, the third and final webinar I want to let you know about today is called Challenges and Opportunities for Improving Secure Coding Practices. This one is happening Thursday, May 26th at 3 p.m. Eastern on Security Boulevard. This one is sponsored by Secure Code Warrior. Despite the vast array of security measures adopted by organizations, we continue to see the repercussions of software vulnerabilities. Drawing from insights from the recent report, the State of Developer-Driven Security Survey 2022, Secure Code Warriors co-founders Peter Danhue and Matthias Madau will discuss the findings and challenges around current secure coding practices and identify operations or opportunities that organizations can embrace to improve developer security skills and ultimately software security. All right, that's it for the webinar's preview. I'll be back next time around with a brand new batch for you. Until then, I hope everybody has a great day, and please, whatever you do, stay safe. All right, we are back. Next up, we've got 2 views with Vizard on today's show. The first one is with Splunk Senior Vice President and General Manager for Observability, Spiros Xanthos, and they talk about why observability gains are being made faster today, which is an interesting topic for sure. And then in his second conversation, Mike Vizard speaks with Cybersecurity CTO Daniel Krvelovich, and they explain why CI/CD platforms have become a major attack surface that needs defending. Certainly a very, very important topic, especially if you are doing DevOps. So let's go ahead and roll both of them right now.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Spiros Xanthos, who is Senior Vice President and General Manager for Observability at Splunk, and we're talking about the latest observability report from the company. Spiros, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Michael.
This is the second or maybe third. I lost count of how many of these reports you guys have done, but maybe you could give us some of the highlights. But I think we've both been around the block a couple of times, so I'm always interested in what surprised you in the latest results.
Yes. So, Michael, this is the second time we do this, and we see some interesting findings in this one, but also an interesting comparison to the previous one. So this is a research based on more than 1,200 observability practitioners, managers, experts, and we asked several questions and gathered a lot of data to understand, let's say, the maturity level of observability and the benefits. So I would say that a few of the things that we observed in this study that I find very interesting is that observability, first of all, is maturing as a concept, and we have a lot more adoption and a lot, let's say, new entrants to the practice, right? A lot more companies are adopting it. But we also see a big difference between, let's say, those who have matured their practices versus who have not. Like the most striking for me is that advanced observability deployments in this study found that cut downtime costs by 90%. So if we were to take an average across all the companies we surveyed, so those who have advanced deployments estimated costs on average of $2.5 million of downtime versus almost 24 for those who are beginners. And obviously, what drives all of that, both the complexity and the observability adoption, is the cloud adoption. So the more advanced observability deployments seem to correlate very well with cloud native applications and multi-cloud use.
What is your sense of what causes the moment in time where people think that they need to move beyond monitoring to drive into observability? Because a lot of people think that they're kind of one and the same, but other folks seem to distinguish. But at some point, what causes me to wake up in the morning and go, I need to think about this from an observability perspective rather than just traditional monitoring?
Yes. So I think what drives all of that, I guess, at the high level is the need for to meet, let's say, business goals at a faster pace, right? In a very competitive environment where everybody's trying essentially to transform their businesses to something much more digital and online. And the data tell us the following, actually, if you see the study again. First of all, those who have, let's say, the advanced deployments, 75% of the more advanced deployments of observability have actually cloud native applications. So there is a very strong correlation essentially with cloud and cloud native and observability. So what happens typically is a company starts transitioning its infrastructure to the cloud and starts adopting, let's say, cloud native technologies such as containers and Kubernetes. And then subsequently, once they do that, they start also maybe adopting serverless and microservices to improve, let's say, their development velocity. And once that happens, obviously that has a lot of benefits, but also, let's say, those applications and infrastructure become more complex. So companies need to start adopting better monitoring practices, right? And that's when observability comes to play. And so we see a very strong correlation of adoption of these technologies and maturity of observability, meaning the more customers have adopted these technologies, the more likely it is that they will have an advanced or intermediate observability, let's say, maturity practice. And and there are real benefits, right? Like this is not just for the sake of adopting cloud or cloud native technologies. So we see that, for example, there is observability leaders, those with more mature deployments, are 2x as likely to report success in digital transformation efforts. It's 72% versus 32% for those who are not mature. So obviously, all of that follows what the business wants to do, right? And there are tangible benefits.
It almost sounds like complexity begets observability. But when I talk to some folks, they understand the core concept and they get the idea that they can query systems and kind of figure out the root cause of issues. But frankly, they just don't know what questions to ask. So how do we get people to the point where they know what questions to ask to make use of the observability capabilities that we're providing?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So in some sense, what does complexity mean in the first place, right? Complexity in these systems means that I have a lot more components. Let's say I might be running a microservices architecture that may be running on containers. I might have hundreds or thousands of these that are also being updated much more frequently, right? I might be deploying a container every time, let's say I have a new code deployment. So all that creates so much, essentially, so many edge cases and so many failure scenarios that it's very, as you say, it's very difficult to even know where to start asking a question, right? So at the end of the day, observability is this idea that I should be able to collect a lot more data and higher quality data about my infrastructure and application and correlate it a lot better. So hopefully the tools I'm using, and that's a big part of what we're trying to do at Splunk, don't just give me this data so I can query and ask questions, because like say, I might not even know what questions to ask, right? Like there's nobody who's an expert in the entire application infrastructure anymore. And that's why we have all these war rooms with maybe tens of people. So the tools hopefully start telling us where to start looking, right? Like we had this term AI Ops, obviously for a while now, but to me, AI Ops is this idea that the tools themselves start telling us what might be wrong, right? In some cases, they might even point to the specific, issue. But even if not, at least they should guide us, reduce the scope of the investigation. Let's say when something is wrong, so I can quickly diagnose what happened without knowing in advance what question to ask.
There's a lot of hype these days about all things related to AI. Do you think observability is going to be kind of a precursor to achieving more AI ops? Because frankly, we just need the data to analyze, to drive the models that will close loop the solution.
Yes. So in my perspective, obviously we always wanted more automation and let's say systems telling us via machine learning or analytics how to solve problems, right? Or ideally solve them for us. I think the difference now with the way, let's say, modern observability tools are being built, starting with, let's say, the standardization of telemetry collection with projects like OpenTelemetry, we have essentially a lot more data and higher quality data because the data is structured at the source, follows like standards that essentially tools can analyze a lot better. In simple terms, I think the signal to noise ratio is improving quite a bit in like modern observability deployments. And as a result, the tools essentially to say we can build more effective models and more effective analytics where essentially most of the time they can be right, so people can start trusting them, right? Where in the past, let's say, obviously we had similar goals, but the quality of the data maybe was not good enough, right? We didn't have enough structure in the data, and we didn't have standardization, of course. So, you can only do so much given like, bad quality data. Where I think with observability, we have a lot more data, obviously better systems to analyze them. And as a result, I think AIOps can start becoming something more effective or something that is more mainstream and more people can use, let's say, effectively.
Do you think it's becoming simpler to instrument applications? Because historically we had APM solutions, but we only used them maybe for the most important applications we had because you had to put the agent inside it. And it was a lot of work. You had to have a DevOps team that managed the agents and they cost a lot. So will that get easier as we go along? And what's driving that?
Yes. So we at Splunk, and me personally, we're big believers in standardizing all of that. Anything that goes into the user's environment should be vendor neutral and should be ideally open source, right? So we believe OpenTelemetry is achieving these goals quite well. So we're supporting the project a lot. So what's happening is with the maturity of projects like OpenTelemetry, you have essentially reliable and let's say agent and telemetry collection technology that is standardized kind of becomes easier to use and is widely applicable, right? Anybody can adopt it. And then once they implement it, they are free to do whatever they want with the data, right? Like they're not tied to any vendor. They don't have to use an expensive APM solution, let's say everywhere, if obviously they don't want to. They can use it, they can use commercial or open source as they see fit, right? But they have full control of what's happening with their data, right? They can even send data to multiple vendors if they wish to do so, right? Or even an internally deployed system and an external vendor. So yes, I think this part is becoming a lot better. And as a result, I think we will see higher quality telemetry again and, used in everywhere, ideally, right? In all the parts of the application infrastructure that matter.
Speaking of everywhere, will observability go beyond DevOps? We think about it as a core DevOps tenant these days, but I wonder if we're going to see more business users looking at this data to correlate a IT event to a business event, because they are more dependent upon IT and software than ever. So will this become a much bigger set of use cases?
Definitely. And I see this happening in a few ways, actually. So first of all, oftentimes what we observe happening with our own customers is that the most value actually comes from application, let's say, level data, right? Level that have the data that have context about what maybe the user is attempting to do. And so meaning, okay, it's important to know, let's say, if part of my infrastructure application is reliable, right? It's running according to some SLA I have. But it's actually way more important to know when an SLA violation actually means that, my business has an issue. Let's say if I'm an online, let's say an e-commerce business, right? I want to know actually if, let's say, my checkout throughput or latency is being affected by some infrastructure problem. Because let's say I have a problem that doesn't affect the business, right? Because I can measure and correlate the two now. Then, okay, I have to solve it, but it's not like the end of the world. But let's say I have a small problem that's actually affecting the business and the users, right? Let's say my checkout has become a lot, my checkout latency has become a lot higher, and as a result, I'm losing customers. Then that becomes like an urgent issue I have to resolve immediately. So we see a lot of that happening already, but oftentimes it's more like on a per customer basis, and they're doing it, let's say, by combining maybe custom metrics with tracing or something like that. The other way I see it also happening is people start, like as telemetry, machine-generated data, let's say, for observability is so rich that oftentimes people will send those, let's say, to an observability solution for monitoring and troubleshooting, but they might also send it for a subset of the data, start sending it to like a BI kind of tool to essentially do offline analytics and extract rich information about the business. So the latter use case is less about maybe how does like reliability affect my business, but it's more about like understanding the business and the users better.
One of the things we do hear people struggling with is the amount of data that they're collecting and storing, and sometimes maybe it gets away from them. What's your best advice to folks about how to think about storing all this data and what's valuable to keep and what's not?
So actually, I am a believer that more data is better because you will never know what you might need when you need it, right? Like, for example, when it comes to log collection or even like trace collection, we at Splunk are believers of full fidelity data collection if it's feasible, right? Collect all the data, but ideally do it in a way that, it's not prohibitively expensive, right? From a point of like processing and storing that data. Because there are so many corner use cases, both for actually observability, but even security scenarios that you might never know what data to collect. So now, ideally, you want some sort of data tiering, and ideally, whatever system you're using does that. So at Splunk, for example, we try very hard, both in terms of how we process and store data, but also how we price our products at this point to encourage essentially the full fidelity data collection, right? Like we don't want to make it prohibitively expensive. We take responsibility for how to handle, let's say, a large volume of data, so it's feasible for the user to do it. Of course, users themselves can also kind of figure out a tiering architecture where maybe not all data is as valuable, so not all data has to be kind of processed the same way. But I am a believer that the right strategy is not to throw or drop the data on the floor, but somehow figure a way to store it and analyze it and have it available when they need it.
What do you wish that most organizations knew or appreciated about observability before they got started? What would make it simpler for everybody to succeed from your perspective going in versus something that they learned the proverbial hard way?
So I think it's probably important. First of all, I actually think because any new initiative, the most important thing is to just get started, right? So I think it's important to start as soon as possible, because what we see in the study that we were talking about earlier is essentially the more advanced observability deployments become, the more the benefits, let's say, that you have. Of course, you cannot go from 0 to 100 right away. So I would advise that they start small, right? Maybe they pick an application that they deploy it on the cloud, or they pick a set of infrastructure that move to the cloud and start there, right? Start by trying to do it, let's say, for one part of infrastructure or application, maybe adopt OpenTelemetry and a backend application solution, standardize a bit, figure out essentially the libraries and everything they're going to use. And they're ideally, like in a central fashion, maybe as part of the platform or observability team efforts, provide, let's say, all the libraries and all the tooling to all the developers, make it very simple so you can expand everywhere, right? Pilot somewhere, standardize, then expand.
Hey, Spiros, thanks for being on the show and sharing your insights. That was great.
Thanks a lot for inviting me, Michael.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Daniel Kribilevich, who is CTO for Cybersecurity. We're going to be talking about all things related to CI/CDs and security. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
You recently put together a list of CI/CD security issues. I think you have 10 of them. What's at the top of that list, and are we just not paying enough attention to CI/CD security?
Yeah, so I think CI/CD security is a space that's been growing exponentially pretty much over the past year or two. And there was kind of a point in time where CI/CD was not part of what defenders were thinking about when they were looking out to protect the organizations and protect the crown jewels of organizations. But what happened with the engineering ecosystem is that ever since DevOps became a commodity, ever since CI/CD became something that's happening in every single organization, we've been witnessing many new opportunities and avenues for attackers to abuse the engineering ecosystem to get to production. And so CI/CD has become a big part of what attackers are thinking about when they're looking out to get to the organization's crown jewels. And obviously, this is one of the motivations for us to do what we're doing at Cider. The realization that there is a gap for defenders today with understanding what is happening in the engineering ecosystem as far as how code gets to production and what are the processes and systems that support this process of coding into production, and then deriving from that, what are the opportunities, what is the attacker's perspective of these CI/CD environments and processes, and what are the opportunities that this amazing thing called DevOps and CI/CD and new age engineering that makes engineering a lot more agile and fast and able to deliver applications to production in a more effective way. What is the security angle of all of these amazing things that are happening, and how can security adapt to this new reality and continue to provide the security guardrails, continue to allow the security train to move fast and be diverse and be dynamic, but without making any compromises on security. And so as part of this, what we did is basically a research, a very deep and extensive research about the main risks, the main security risks that exist in the CI/CD ecosystem. The project spanned for around 9-10 months, and it was done by myself and Omer, who is the head of research at Cider, in collaboration with 15, I think, of the top application security experts, some of the top application security experts in the industry. And what we did as part of that research was fuse together a few sources of information. One was research about some of the most common and major hacks and security flaws and security vulnerabilities around CI/CD that got published over the last 3-4 years, and a lot of research that we at Cider have been doing together with clients and companies that we work with around their own CI/CD environments and challenges and controls and gaps, together with many discussions with industry experts. So we fused together all these insights coming from all these sources into one single document that depicts the top 10 CI/CD security risks. Obviously, we were very diligent in making sure that Cybersecurity and the people that were involved in this initiative from Cybersecurity, we all come from a background of enterprise security, application security. But the motivation and objective was to make sure that the document that we're releasing is as relevant as possible to as many verticals and industries and levels of maturity of security programs as possible. And this is why we did the deep research around, the analysis of the anatomy of security breaches and the analysis of the environments that we analyze in discussions with industry experts to make sure that this is as relevant as possible to as many people as possible. And we compiled together that list of the top 10 CI/CD security risks. Each risk in this document has a description of the risk itself, the characteristics of the risk, and then the impact of the risk, a set of recommendations and measures that organizations and defenders can take to protect from this risk, to protect, prevent, detect anything having to do with that risk. And of course, a set of reference documentation for that specific risk, primarily focused or primarily built on the resources that we read as part of the research about the anatomies of different breaches and security flaws and security incidents that had happened, which was one of the sources that we used when we were compiling the list together.
Do you think that attackers are stepping up their attacks now, or is it just that we are discovering that these attacks are being made and this has been happening all along, but we just didn't know?
It's a good question. I think it's a combination of both. I think with any vertical, not specifically in the AppSec domain, but with any vertical, attackers are always a step in front of defenders. Attackers are setting the trend, and then defenders are reacting to the trend and putting up their defenses to match and to equate to the capabilities of the attackers. And that's been the reality with CI/CD as well. I think the main incentive for the large focus and emphasis that the security industry has been placing over the past 2 years around CI/CD and optimizing security controls within engineering environments were hacks and security incidents like SolarWinds, like the breach to CodeCov, like dependency confusion, like Log4j, like Spring4Shell, like many events, which the motivation for the adversary was to find ways to get a foothold inside the engineering environment, inside the CI environment, inside the source control of an organization, and then leverage that presence in order to make their way to production. And as these attacks continue to happen, the focus is shifting more and more of defenders. The focus of defenders is shifting more towards CI/CD, but that is also bringing to more attackers the attention to the potential of CI/CD. And so I think, the gap's not closed yet. More attackers are discovering that CI/CD is in many cases the path of least resistance, and many more attacks and attack vectors are developed. And I think it'll take some time for the industry to kind of stabilize and for defenders to be in the position that they need to be in order to prevent attackers from being in a superior position.
So you guys built something called the CI/CD GOAT. What's that about?
Yeah, so the CI/CD GOAT is a deliberately vulnerable CI/CD environment. It's a project that we worked on for a few months and was released, I think it was a month or 2 months after we released this top 10 CI/CD security risk project. The term GOAT has been used many times in the past in the industry to describe various deliberately vulnerable environments. There are projects like Cloud Goat by Rhino Security Labs and TerraGoat by Bridge Crew. And these are different types of deliberately vulnerable environments that were built to allow security practitioners, defenders, and white hat hackers, and anyone who is interested in getting hands-on experience with hacking various environments and getting a feel for the attacker's perspective, and then obviously fixing the flaws that they just abused and understanding the defender's perspective. So there's a category of projects which are different type of GOATs, which provide defenders or anyone, as I said, with deliberately vulnerable environments. CI/CD GOAT is one of them. So CI/CD GOAT and the top 10 security risks, CI/CD security risk project, they originate from the same motivation. The motivation is that for defenders, in order to be able to be good at defending the environments that they are responsible for protecting, they have to be able to think like attackers. They have to be familiar with the attacker's perspective and understand the type of risks that they are facing and how an adversary would be able to leverage and carry out those risks, and also what defenders need to do in order to protect from these risks. And the first part of understanding the attacker's perspective is learning the theory. And the theory is provided in the top 10 CI/CD security risk project. If you want to understand the types of risks, the types of questions that you as a defender need to ask yourself in order to align the environment that you're responsible for protecting with the new risk landscape, the new attack surface of CI/CD environments, then the top 10 CI/CD security risk project is a great place to start. But then you also have to practice, hands-on practice, and that's the layer you put on top of the theory. And so this is why we built the CI/CD GOAT. The CI/CD GOAT contains an environment with a source control system, with a CI environment that people can download and host locally on their machines. And through that environment, they can practice and deal with 10 different types of challenges with varying levels of difficulty. Each challenge focuses on exploiting a different risks. Obviously, the challenges are aligned, and the risks and the description of the risk and the solutions are aligned with the top 10 security risks, CI/CD security risks project. And so it's a great way for defenders to practice hands-on how an attacker would exploit and carry out these different attacks, and what are the measures that they can implement, again, hands-on, in order to prevent these attacks. And obviously, everything that they would do as part of the CI/CD GOAT project adheres to the same principles and many times the exact same controls that they can and would be required to carry out in their own environments, their own real environments that they're responsible for protecting.
I think everybody's familiar with attacks such as SQL injection, but what types of attacks are aimed specifically at a CI/CD platform? Give me an example of one.
Yeah, so the CI/CD environment is such an interesting attack surface because what it basically does is create a full path to production, all the way from a source control system to production, to the environments where production workloads are running. This is the essence and the reason for existence of CI/CD, to take code from source control and then run various tests on it, package it, bundle it together, do various activities on the code, and then ship artifacts to production. This is, in a nutshell, the essence of CI/CD. Now, the fact that you have a system or a collection of systems that are collectively responsible for taking code from source control systems, which in itself is in many times a critical or sensitive asset that organizations need to protect. So on the one hand, they have access to the code, they have access to various artifact repositories, they get all these artifacts, and then those same systems have access to production. They store secrets and credentials and tokens that allow them to take these packages, take the code, and ship it to production. So if we're talking about an environment that stores the secrets and the tokens and the credentials that provide access to production, many times with administrative credentials that allow full administrative control over production, CI/CD is not different from any other solution that is used by the organization to store and manage secrets and tokens and credentials, like a domain controller, like a Vault or PIM-PAM solution. And of course, attackers are aware of that. So running malicious code inside a CI environment, for example, is useful for attackers to exfiltrate these secrets, or use these secrets, or use the access to the CI to ship malicious code downwards in the pipeline to production, like what happened in SolarWinds, for example. SolarWinds was an example of attackers that hacked the SolarWinds CI environment and then used the SolarWinds CI to ship malicious code to 18,000 of SolarWinds customers through the legitimate SolarWinds pipeline. So exfiltrate secrets, ship malicious code to production, run malicious code on the CI server, on the underlying host of the CI environment whenever it's not SaaS but self-hosted, and move laterally within the data center to adjacent systems. Many different types of hacks, many different objectives. Actually, we have a talk about that in the upcoming RSA conference, where we kind of dissect the anatomy of different types of CI/CD hacks and attacks and understand the motivations of attackers and how they were able to carry out those motivations. So anyone that's interested in learning more about the anatomy of a CI/CD hack, that talk in RSA would probably be a great place to gain some of that information.
What is the one thing you wish the folks who ran these CI/CD platforms would think about when it comes to security? In your experience, what do you see over and over again, the common mistakes?
So I think the most common mistake or most common gap is the gap in mindset, is the gap that people which are responsible for these systems have around understanding that those systems are not just systems that are responsible for handling code and shipping it to production. And the fact that they are many times internal or behind a firewall does not really protect them from today's risk landscape, threat landscape, from the adversaries of today. And those systems do provide various security configurations and settings. I think the gap is mainly around understanding that CI/CD is a big part of an organization's attack surface. CI/CD environment systems processes are a big part of what defenders and builders and maintainers of these systems need to be concerned about, because attackers are looking to hack these systems. And like I mentioned earlier, the more hacks there are, the more new curious hackers are born. And I think we're still very far from the tipping point where, there are no more new opportunities or new avenues for attackers to get into CI/CD environments and to run malicious code on CI infrastructure. And so just shifting that mindset and understanding that we are responsible as defenders or as DevOps practitioners, we are responsible for systems that attackers are looking to hack. And we need to make sure that the posture of these systems and the posture of these processes is appropriate to those of to that of systems that are a target for sophisticated adversaries. And then just that shift in mindset will cause them to be a lot more proactive and a lot more diligent about making sure that any new change, any new technology, any new automation that is introduced into the environment is done in a way that takes into consideration the various risks and the various opportunities that it presents for attackers. So I think, it's not a technical gap, but I think that shift will make the most significant leap for us as defenders, for us as an industry, into securing CI/CD.
All right, let's determine our priorities, as they say. Daniel, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, guys, back to you in the studio.
All right, that rounds out today's TechStrong TV broadcast. I hope you enjoyed today's conversations and presentations as much as I always enjoy bringing them to you. Tomorrow and Thursday, we are going to be live streaming from the KubeCon Europe event happening in Valencia, Spain. It will be, we'll do a live stream and then we'll rerun the live stream because of the time difference. So you can check out TechStrong TV right here on DevOps.com, Container Journal, or Security Boulevard, and you can watch the live stream from the events. We have a lot of interviews lined up for you during the 2 days there. And then after that, we are actually taking a short hiatus until after Memorial Day. So we will be running previously enjoyed episodes of TechStrong TV right up through the Memorial Day weekend. And then starting Tuesday, May 31st, we'll be back with a brand new episode for you. So quick recap. 2 days of KubeCon Europe, Wednesday and Thursday of this week, and then reruns of TechStrong TV until May 31st. So hopefully I will be rid of my cold before then, but I will see you back here bright and early on May 31st. And until then, I hope everybody stays safe. Please, please, whatever you do, enjoy your Memorial Day weekend if you're here in the States, and I will see you back here Tuesday, May 31st. Have a great day, and please, whatever you do, stay safe.